James and Amanda Bennett were the picture-perfect couple in a quiet Missouri town, until a national TV show exposed Amanda's secret affair, turning their lives into a nightmare. What happened next wasn't just heartbreak, it was a deadly spiral of betrayal, obsession, and shocking twists no one saw coming. They lived in a modest but well-kept two-story home on the edge of town, in a neighborhood where people still waved to each other from their porches and left their doors unlocked. James was quiet and polite, the kind of man who shoveled the neighbor's driveway without being asked. Amanda was friendly, warm, and always the first to organize bake sales or PTA meetings at the local elementary school where she taught third grade. Together they painted the picture of a wholesome, loving couple, stable, supportive, and deeply connected. To outsiders, their marriage appeared calm and content. They attended church every Sunday and were regulars at community events. Photos of their vacations to the Ozarks or the occasional weekend trip to Kansas City filled Amanda's Facebook page, each one capturing them smiling arm in arm. Their marriage had lasted nearly 8 years, and people often said they were made for each other. If they ever argued, no one ever saw it. If anything troubled them behind closed doors, they kept it well hidden. James worked in IT for a small security software company. He was known for being reliable, maybe even a little dull. Amanda had a spark to her, a vibrant energy that drew people in, especially children. She loved her job, and her students adored her. They had no children of their own, but Amanda often talked about someday. James, on the other hand, never seemed to push for it. Their house, though large enough for a family, remained quiet. Filled with framed photographs, candles, and silence. There were whispers, though nothing substantial. A co-worker once mentioned James being distant during lunch breaks. Amanda had been seen more than once leaving the gym later than usual. But in a town where rumors often fizzled out as quickly as they started, no one took much notice. It wasn't until they agreed to participate in a reality TV show, more out of curiosity than necessity, that their carefully maintained image began to crack. The show was marketed as a relationship test, something lighthearted. Couples were told it was about trust and truth. James and Amanda were skeptical, but eventually agreed, thinking it might be fun. Cameras followed them for a few weeks. They laughed about it with friends, joked about what secrets the show might try to dig up. They had no idea what was coming. By the time the episode aired, the town's golden couple would be anything but perfect, and the fallout would turn admiration into horror. The episode aired on a Friday night, right after prime time, and it didn't take long before it set the internet on fire. The show, Lies Uncovered, had built its reputation on exposing infidelity in dramatic fashion. Its producers thrived on shock value, using hidden cameras, dramatic voiceovers, and confrontational moments to capture raw reactions. Amanda Bennett was the centerpiece of that night's broadcast. As the segment unfolded, viewers watched as Amanda was shown laughing and flirting with a man at a local gym, identified only as Brett. In the episode, the footage escalated quickly. Cameras captured the two exchanging text messages, meeting after workouts, and eventually checking into a cheap motel just outside town. The segment ended with a sit-down interview in which Brett admitted to a months-long relationship with Amanda. The final moments showed Amanda storming away from a camera crew that had ambushed her in the gym parking lot. Her face was red, her voice shaking. The clip ended there, but it was enough. In hours, clips of the episode were circulating across social media platforms. The title alone, Wife's Secret Gym Affair, Exposed, was catchy enough to guarantee virality. Amanda's name quickly became a trending topic in the local community. Her face, once familiar for cheerful school functions and meme pages, former students' parents whispered about it in PTA meetings. Neighbors watched the video on loop, some in disbelief, others glued to the drama. James had known something was off. He had started to notice Amanda was coming home late more often, claiming she had schoolwork or errands. But he hadn't expected this. Not the cameras, not the public shame. The moment he saw Amanda on screen holding hands with someone else, something inside him snapped. His humiliation wasn't private. It was broadcast to millions. Amanda tried to do damage control. She stayed off social media, called in sick to work, and avoided leaving the house, but it was too late. The entire town had seen it. Some people tried to defend her, calling the show exploitative and cruel. But others were less forgiving, especially after Brett's identity became public. He was a well-known personal trainer with a reputation for getting too close to clients. Now his name was linked to Amanda forever. What started as a reality TV stunt meant for entertainment had spiraled into real-world chaos. Behind closed doors, tension brewed like a storm. What came next would be worse than anything the cameras had captured. In the days following the episode's release, the Bennett household transformed from a peaceful suburban home into a pressure cooker of silence, tension, and unspoken rage. The once well-tended front lawn went uncut, the porch light remained off, and the windows stayed dark. Neighbors who had once waved now passed by slowly, their eyes drawn to the house as if expecting something to happen. But nothing visible did, at least not at first. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Amanda moved quietly through the house, trying to avoid James. He, in turn, kept to himself, spending long hours in the basement where he once worked from home. The glow of his computer screen was the only light he seemed to tolerate. He didn't speak much. He didn't eat much either. Mostly he stared at Amanda's phone records, social media profiles, and even bank transactions. His hurt had hardened into obsession. He didn't confront Amanda with screaming or accusations. His anger came in waves of cold detachment and quiet surveillance. He changed the passwords to the Wi-Fi, disconnected the smart speaker, and began locking doors inside the house. Amanda noticed, but said nothing. Her attempts at conversation were brief and cautious. Every word felt like stepping on glass. Amanda knew the damage was severe, but she didn't understand how deep James's anger went. She assumed the worst had passed, that the public exposure was the low point. She was wrong. James wasn't just hurt, he was humiliated, and not just by her betrayal, but by how it was delivered to him, edited, narrated, and broadcast as entertainment. His private life had become public property, and that humiliation simmered just beneath the surface. Amanda tried to regain control of her life. She reached out to her school, offering to return in a few weeks. She also attempted to contact Brett, but he had cut all ties after the backlash. Her social media accounts remained deactivated, and the few friends who reached out offered sympathy but not support. She felt alone, cornered, and watched James become unpredictable. One night he rearranged the living room furniture in silence, placing chairs in odd spots, removing pictures from the walls. Another day he spent hours cleaning the garage, scrubbing the floor until his hands were raw. Amanda started to feel like she was living with a stranger. A man she once trusted, now transformed into something cold and unreadable. Whatever held their marriage together before had unraveled. There was no laughter, no kindness, no conversation, just the sound of silence, broken by the occasional creak of the floorboards or the buzz of James's phone. Something had shifted in the house. Something dangerous was building, and Amanda could feel it creeping closer every day. The morning started quietly, like any other. The sun rose over Springfield, casting soft light on the Bennett home, its beige siding and white trim still betraying no sign of what had unfolded within. But by the afternoon, the quiet was shattered. At 3:42 p.m., a neighbor across the street called 911. They reported a loud noise like a firework, followed by a short scream. Moments later, police arrived at the scene. Inside the house, the scene was eerily still. Amanda Bennett was found lying on the floor of the upstairs bedroom, a single gunshot wound in her chest. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no defensive wounds, no broken glass. Her hands were empty. No weapon was found near her. In her right hand, a small, tear-stained tissue was loosely clutched. She was pronounced dead at the scene. James was found downstairs, sitting on the living room couch. He didn't try to run. He didn't appear shaken. According to the officers, he looked hollow, as though something in him had already gone. In his hands was Amanda's phone. He was scrolling through it when the police walked in. When asked what had happened, his response was calm, flat. "She came at me. I was scared." He repeated it, but nothing about his demeanor suggested fear. The murder weapon was quickly located. James's legally registered handgun kept in the bedroom closet. It was still warm. He was taken into custody without resistance. No lawyer was requested. No questions were answered beyond the initial statement. To detectives, his silence spoke volumes. Amanda's family was devastated. Her sister arrived at the scene within hours, visibly shaken and confused. Friends and co-workers began sharing stories of Amanda's recent behavior. Withdrawn, tired, anxious. Many said she had seemed off since the episode aired. But no one suspected she was in danger. To them, James had always been quiet but harmless. The idea that he could be violent didn't seem to fit. But the evidence pointed to something deliberate. Amanda had been shot at close range. The bullet entered straight through the chest. There were no signs she had been running or defending herself. The room was tidy, untouched, as if the shot had been fired during a conversation, not a confrontation. News spread quickly. The story took on a life of its own, headlines blaring. Missouri wife killed days after reality show exposes affair. The town that once admired the Bennetts now looked at their story with a mix of shock and morbid curiosity. But as the investigation began, detectives realized this case was more than a tragic domestic dispute. There were missing pieces, unanswered questions, and strange inconsistencies that suggested the truth was far more complicated than it appeared. As the investigation unfolded, what initially seemed like a clear-cut case of domestic violence quickly began to unravel. Detectives were troubled by inconsistencies in James's account. He claimed Amanda had attacked him and that he acted in self-defense, but there were no signs of a struggle, no bruises on Amanda's body, no defensive wounds on James, and no objects in the room disturbed. The forensic evidence told a different story, one that didn't support panic or fear. It hinted at planning. The murder weapon, a 9mm handgun registered in James's name, was located in the bedroom closet, partially hidden under a blanket. It had only one bullet missing, the one found in Amanda. There were no fingerprints on the weapon. Investigators suspected he had wiped it down after the shooting. When asked about that detail, James had no explanation. He simply stared blankly at the wall, offering nothing. Detectives expanded their search, pulling surveillance footage from nearby homes and businesses. One camera, mounted on a neighbor's garage across the street, captured Amanda arriving home alone around 11:15 a.m. She carried a tote bag, paused briefly to check her mailbox, and walked inside. Then, at 11:30 a.m., James's car pulled into the driveway. He exited the vehicle slowly and stood by the driver's door for several moments before entering the house. This timeline contradicted James's claim that he was home when Amanda arrived. According to his statement, the confrontation had erupted as soon as she entered, leading to the shooting. But the footage told a different story. Amanda had been inside for more than 20 minutes before James arrived. Whatever happened between them occurred after he came in, not in a moment of surprise or fear. Investigators also noticed strange behavior leading up to the incident. A week before Amanda's death, James had purchased a small lockbox, latex gloves, and a bottle of industrial-strength cleaner from a local hardware store. The cashier remembered him because he seemed unusually quiet, refusing to make eye contact and paying in cash. When detectives asked James about the purchases, he claimed he was doing some cleaning. The timing, however, raised red flags. Further inspection of the couple's home revealed that James had recently deleted several security camera recordings from their doorbell camera system. Fortunately, tech experts were able to recover fragments of those files. The clips didn't show the shooting, but they did confirm Amanda and James had not been speaking much in the days leading up to it. The tension was visible, even without sound. Each piece of evidence pulled investigators further from the self-defense theory and closer to the idea of premeditation. The clean room, the staged narrative, the altered footage. It all pointed to a man trying to control a story, not survive a threat. And just when the case seemed to be taking shape, a new tip arrived that would change everything. Just as detectives were beginning to build a strong case against James for premeditated murder, an unexpected development threw the investigation in a new direction. An anonymous email was sent to a local crime reporter who had been covering the Bennett case since day one. The subject line read, "James wasn't the only one betrayed." The message was short but explosive, suggesting that James had been having his own affair long before Amanda's was exposed. Attached to the email were screenshots of text messages, some of them intimate, others explicitly romantic. The contact name had been saved as R, and the conversation went back nearly a year. Investigators quickly traced the number to Rena Morgan, a co-worker from James's office. She was a marketing assistant at the software company where James worked, and was known to be friendly and outgoing. She had left the company just 2 months prior, citing personal reasons. Detectives paid Rena a visit. At first she was hesitant, but when shown the evidence, she admitted the affair. She and James had been seeing each other in secret for almost a year. According to her, James had told her his marriage was functionally over and that Amanda was emotionally distant. He had even discussed getting a divorce, though he never followed through. Rena revealed that James would often vent about Amanda, sometimes in harsh, angry terms. He had referred to her as manipulative, and once allegedly said, "She's going to ruin me before I get out." What troubled investigators most was the timing. The affair with Rena had started months before Amanda's relationship with Brett. This changed the narrative entirely. Amanda's actions, which had been painted as the inciting betrayal, might have been a reaction, an attempt to reclaim dignity or seek emotional refuge after learning of James's betrayal. When detectives cross-checked Amanda's deleted messages and recovered drafts, they found one unsent message saved in her notes app. "You started this. I'm just finishing it." That line took on a new weight now. This revelation undermined James's potential motive of emotional shock. It showed he wasn't an innocent, devastated husband driven to violence by a sudden betrayal. He was a man whose own secret infidelity had been hidden long before Amanda's ever came to light. It also raised a chilling possibility. Had Amanda discovered his affair and acted out of pain? And if so, had James retaliated not in fear, but in fury? The investigation now had to consider a wider motive. One shaped not just by betrayal, but by guilt, control, and the need to keep James's own secrets buried. The carefully controlled image he had built was crumbling, and underneath it lay something far more dangerous. As investigators dug deeper, a troubling detail surfaced that threatened to derail the entire case. The sudden disappearance of Amanda's phone. When James was first arrested, police collected her phone as evidence, but for a critical 48-hour period, it was missing from the chain of custody. By the time it was returned, several text threads, voicemails, and app data had been wiped. The phone had passed briefly through the hands of James's defense attorney, who claimed it was an accidental mix-up during the initial property collection. But detectives weren't convinced. The timing was too convenient. A digital forensics team was brought in to recover any remaining data. They examined backup files stored in the cloud and retrieved partial records that revealed a series of deleted messages and unsent drafts. What they found cast new light on Amanda's final days and shifted the investigation's direction yet again. 2 weeks before Amanda's affair had been exposed on national television, she had discovered James's relationship with Rena Morgan, A recovered screenshot showed Amanda taking a picture of James's phone screen while he slept. The image captured a text from Rena that read, "Wish you were here instead." In the Notes app, Amanda had written out several drafts of a message to James, confronting him. One of them read, "You lie with a smile. I see it now." Detectives pieced together a timeline suggesting that Amanda may have learned of James's affair first, and that her relationship with Brett Conway had begun shortly afterward. Though still a betrayal, it no longer looked like she had been the first to break the marriage vows. Her actions began to resemble a retaliation, or a cry for attention in a marriage already fractured beyond repair. Even more unsettling was a video recovered from Amanda's cloud storage, recorded a few days before her death. In it, Amanda sits in her parked car, speaking directly into the camera. She looks tired, her voice is shaky. She says, "If something happens to me, don't let anyone believe I was unstable or reckless. I know things about James, things he doesn't want getting out." The video abruptly cuts off after 37 seconds. Though incomplete, the message was chilling. It suggested Amanda feared for her safety. Investigators began to wonder if Amanda's appearance on the reality show hadn't just been a stunt. It might have been a calculated act, a final move in a high-stakes emotional battle with her husband, and in trying to humiliate him publicly, she may have unknowingly sealed her fate. The missing phone wasn't just a device. It was a vault of secrets. And even though parts had been erased, what was recovered told a story that neither James nor Amanda had ever wanted the world to see. With James's motives under increasing scrutiny, detectives turned their attention to his behavior in the days leading up to Amanda's death. What they found only deepened their suspicions and painted a picture of quiet planning behind a mask of silence. Security footage from a local gas station showed James 2 days before the shooting purchasing a canister of bleach, latex gloves, and several trash bags. He paid in cash and kept his head low, avoiding eye contact with the cashier. When investigators obtained the store's receipt and timestamp, it aligned perfectly with the timeline of Amanda's video message warning that something felt wrong. Police also recovered footage from a hardware store showing James buying a large plastic tarp and duct tape. These were not routine household items. Combined with the bleach and gloves, detectives began to suspect James had intended not just to commit a crime, but to clean it up afterward. However, Amanda's death had occurred in broad daylight, inside their home, and James had made no attempt to flee or cover up the scene. This contradiction puzzled investigators. Then came an even more unexpected lead. Footage from a fast food restaurant parking lot, taken just a day before the murder, showed James having a brief but tense interaction with Brett Conway, the same gym trainer involved in Amanda's affair. Brett was visibly agitated, pacing while James stood still. Security cameras had no audio, but lip readers were able to identify fragments of the conversation. James appeared to say, "Stay away from her." Brett shook his head and walked away. Brett was brought in for questioning again. He admitted James had approached him, offering money to stop seeing Amanda. He claimed he refused and told James the affair was already over, especially after the fallout from the reality show. Brett also said James's demeanor was unnerving, not angry, just disturbingly calm. He said it felt like James had already decided what was going to happen. Investigators now saw a pattern. James wasn't reacting emotionally, he was calculating, methodical. From purchasing cleaning supplies to confronting Brett, his actions seemed less like those of a man in crisis and more like someone executing a plan. The bleach, gloves, tarp, and duct tape suggested an intent that extended beyond a spontaneous act. The question was no longer whether James had killed Amanda. It was what exactly he had been planning to do after. The mounting evidence pointed to one chilling conclusion. Amanda's death may not have been the end of the plan, but just the beginning. Something had interrupted James's next move. Perhaps the sound of the gunshot, the scream, or the neighbor's quick call to 911. Whatever it was, it had stopped him just short of finishing what he started. As the investigation grew more complex, a surprising discovery in the Bennett home added a new layer to the case: surveillance footage from inside the house. James had installed several security cameras months before the shooting, ostensibly for protection after the reality show aired. Detectives obtained the footage, hoping it would shed light on the events of that fatal day. What they found was both unsettling and revealing. The footage captured the morning of Amanda's death in grainy black and white. Amanda is seen arriving home carrying her tote bag, as previously noted. James follows shortly after. For nearly 2 hours, the cameras show them moving through different rooms, but their interactions are distant. No hugs, no shared glances, only occasional brief exchanges. The tension is palpable even without sound. Then, around 1:15 p.m., the cameras pick up something chilling. James is seen retrieving the handgun from the closet and slipping it into his jacket pocket. He glances toward the staircase leading upstairs, then pauses, seemingly debating his next move. Moments later, Amanda climbs the stairs, heading toward her bedroom. James follows at a slower pace. The footage then shows them entering the bedroom. What happens next is not recorded. The camera outside the door shows only the closed door and shadows moving behind it. After about 5 minutes, the door opens, and James steps out alone, his hands empty. He pauses in the hallway, looking back toward the room, then he walks downstairs. The most startling part comes next. The cameras in the living room capture James sitting quietly on the couch, pulling out Amanda's phone and scrolling through it. His face is unreadable, but his actions deliberate. After several minutes, he stands and moves toward the kitchen. Moments later, a loud noise echoes through the house. A single gunshot, sharp and sudden. Detectives realized the sound came after James had already left the bedroom, which didn't match the timeline initially given. It suggested the possibility of staged events, manipulation of evidence, or even the presence of someone else in the house at the time. When confronted with this footage, James refused to comment. His lawyer insisted the video was taken out of context, but the investigators had more questions than answers. Who fired the shot? Was James alone in the house? Was the shooting even accidental, or part of a larger, darker scheme? Adding to the mystery was a report from a neighbor who had noticed a strange car parked down the street on the day of the murder. The car left before police arrived. Its license plate was partially recorded but led nowhere conclusive. The case that had seemed straightforward now twisted into a web of secrets, hidden truths, and unanswered questions. What was once a simple story of betrayal and tragedy was turning into something far more complicated and far more dangerous. As the investigation neared its final stages, detectives faced a truth more tangled than anyone had expected. James Bennett was no longer just a grieving husband or a jealous spouse. He was part of a complex web of lies, secrets, and manipulation that had shattered 2 lives. The pieces of the puzzle, Amanda's affair, James's own betrayal, the missing phone data, the surveillance footage, and the mysterious visitor, painted a chilling portrait of a marriage. In a final, shocking twist, police uncovered a hidden audio recording saved on Amanda's recovered phone backup. It was a conversation between Amanda and an unknown individual, recorded just days before her death. The voice on the other end warned Amanda that James was planning something drastic, something that could not be stopped by talking or begging. The recording ended abruptly, with Amanda pleading for help. With this evidence, investigators confronted James again. Under pressure, he finally confessed, not just to the shooting, but to the careful orchestration of events that followed. He admitted to confronting Amanda after she tried to leave him, fearing that her betrayal would destroy him publicly. But he denied any intention to kill her. According to him, the gun discharged accidentally during a heated argument. However, the presence of cleaning supplies, deleted footage, and his silence before the police contradicted this. The confession was only part of the story. Authorities suspected that James had planned to cover up the crime, possibly even make it look like Amanda had harmed herself. The mysterious car spotted nearby was linked to a friend who had helped him dispose of some evidence, but who later cooperated with police after facing his own legal troubles. Ultimately, James was charged with second-degree murder. The case became a cautionary tale of how obsession, betrayal, and public humiliation can spiral into deadly consequences. It was a story that gripped the nation. How a quiet Missouri couple's perfect image was shattered by secrets exposed on reality TV, leading to tragedy. Amanda's family set up a foundation in her name to help victims of domestic violence and those affected by public shaming. Meanwhile, the town of Springfield was left to wrestle with its role in the questioning how curiosity and entertainment blurred lines between private pain and public spectacle. The Bennett case reminded everyone that behind every headline is a human story, complex, messy, and often tragic. It revealed the dangers of judgment without understanding and the devastating cost when personal lives become public drama. In the end, the truth was more than just a crime, it was a warning.